So I just try to have the map open for you guys while I'm reading, give some visuals of what's going on and where. Looks like we're starting off with a chapter from Renado. So I'll read a couple of these Gethra chapters, and then we can look into um, continuing maybe a little bit of He Who Basks in Radiance, if I recall correctly. And maybe we can even get Ammon, a character here as well, if you'd like, in the world of Gethra. So it looks like today we're doing Renado chapter 3. I'm going to bump this down a little bit more. Alright, this looks like another shorter travel update, so probably won't take too long. So just to fill you guys in, so far we've had Renado, who works for his father from the Garo crime family. And Renado has been in Kadar Port trying to sell a load of illicit weapons that they smuggled here. The contact that they had in Kadar Port, who was going to buy them from them, had actually been killed by one of the factions in the city. So they had to look around and negotiate and try to find another way to sell off their weapons. So then, after finally getting that all sorted out, they're now heading home to face Renado's father's wrath, presumably because they earned only about 2/3 of what they had been expecting to make on this job. So they're under-delivering a little, but it's only been a few days. Let's see. First of the sixth moon, so it's been 10 days since they set off from Kadar Port on board the Vanchi Dispatch. If you guys have any questions or anything like that while I'm reading, feel free to type them in. I'll get to them right after I finish reading the chapters. But since I'm uploading these onto Spotify and other podcast platforms, I got to make sure I just read through them right away. But I'll look through my messages afterwards, of course, and make sure nobody gets missed. You guys can ask me anything about the stories or anything else, or just keep chatting and sharing your story. All right, so here we go. Renado 3, 11th of the sixth moon, years since Orish, 1478. The smuggling ship was not a large vessel, but it was a fast one. During the 5 years that Renado had worked on board with his uncle Vanchi, they had outrun at least a dozen ships in pursuit. But with strong winds and dark horizons to the south, the dispatch sped across the grey sea. "That's no simple rainstorm," Vanchi said, for the third time. "They are about halfway through the voyage, with another week to the coast." It was always difficult to match the trajectory to the stars perfectly. Sailors regularly emerged in other cities or regions than their targeted destination, so it could take 2 weeks to reach Sheld if they were unlucky. Renado turned away from the dark clouds in the distance. "I don't want to have to harbor at Lomalago for the duration of the hurricane." The winds were chilled, and his uncle and he rested on a bench on the deck with cloaks wrapped about themselves. "At least we'd be welcome there," Vanchi said with a smirk. "It's father's pet project," Renado said. "I'd rather drown than spend my time with his livestock." Vanchi shook his head and looked back into the ocean. Sometimes he read a book, but today he did not. He just watched the skies. Renado helped Oma repair some lengths of rope by tying them together and feeding them through metal rigging pieces. Vanchi kept extras of everything in his cargo hold, though it sometimes cost them space. It had also saved their ship countless times. Oma had pale skin for a man from Sheld, and many of the ship's crew teased him with questions of his parentage. But he was a sturdy man, and the strongest aboard. He had proved himself again and again in his loyalty. Ren remembered the time they had run aground a rock in Copper Bay. Though Oma had scars on his feet and shoulders to show for it, he had pushed the whole dispatch, against the current, off the rock before swimming back aboard. That evening, Renado and the others had a quick dinner of fish and salted bread. The winds had picked up enough that they kept only a skeleton crew on the top deck all afternoon. while the rest took shelter in their bunks or the cargo hold. It was dark as night already. The storm grew worse, pelting the ship with huge drops of rain. Zashi and Bran filled buckets of water from parts of the deck that didn't already have drains. The masts groaned, loud enough to be heard over the roar of the skies. Vanchi spotted it first. An island on the horizon. "Land!" he shouted. "We'll find shelter there." "Is it dusk?" asked Aesar. Vanchi didn't answer, simply twisted the steering wheel with Renado's help and tied it in place. Aesar was insistent. "Is it the Isle of Dusk?" "I don't know," Vanchi replied. His voice strained and full of the same fear that Aesar had expressed. The dark spot on the gray horizon drifted closer, over the next few hours, as the island drifted closer. Its rocky contour became clear. Somewhere, up a long slope, Renado could see trees being lashed by the gale, but there was no sign of light or structure up there. The isle was large enough that from no side could the middle be seen. If it was the Isle of Dusk, they were as likely to never be seen again as they were to be aided. Dozens of ships had sailed too close to the mystical place and had not returned. But Vanchi had made a good judgment in Renado's eyes. Behind them, in the violent darkness, there was no chance of survival. They found no coves or lagoons to hide within, but they moored the Dispatch on the north side of the island, as close to a sheltering boulder as they dared, and waited out the storm. Alright, so there's Renado chapter 3. They have arrived at the Isle of Dusk, a scary place it sounds like, where many ships do not return from, and they have to weather the storm